what's up, y'all? Look, who is Snoop? Thank you guys for always tuning into my YouTube channel. First of all, make sure you subscribe because y'all never know when I'm gonna put these episodes out. Your girl, a big TV star now, author, writing books. Hey, speaking of being an author, my book drops today on July 18th. Would have been my daughter's 25th birthday. Look, no matter where you at, just go ahead and send one up and y'all say happy birthday, KT, for me. Look, today I've invited just some of my closest folks out, and I'm going to reveal the cover of my book, do a book release, a book reading, and sign everybody's books who purchased. So cannot wait to share with you guys what goes down today. Super excited. The energy is amazing because, hey, July 18th is a holiday, baby.
When I had the opportunity to meet Sue 2 years ago, of course we had no idea that she would embark on half of the stuff that she's had to over the past couple of years. And I remember at her National Salon Suites conference, I was like, I think it's time. And I didn't even know at the time, guys, that she was working on her book. I had no idea that she was working and thinking of putting it together. But man, God always has his way of putting stuff in our life that we don't even realize is designed to help other people. And so when I talked to her and I was like, listen, I can't wait for you to write this because there's so many people that are grieving the loss of something, whether it be a person, a job, a toe, I don't know. But we're grieving something. But she has had to grieve something that many of us would never imagine. And so as we put this book together, y'all, there were times where she'd break down, I'd break down. As I was editing the book, I texted her one day like, listen, I do not take this lightly. Thank you for trusting me with your story. Because for me to be the one to be a part of this means a lot. And so, guys, she's going to be reading from her book. Now, try to listen hard. That's why I want y'all to get as close as you can. And then we're going to unveil the covers so you guys get a chance to see this. So make sure you have your cameras out. Snoop Dogg!
I think one thing, and even just spelling out the letters, the acronym for Snoop, strength, navigating obstacles, and overcoming pain, which has definitely been a lot of the past 2.5 years for me. And I feel like that this just kind of put that together. You know what I'm saying? I think this kind of resembles my home, where I live, how people look at me on the outside, but how I feel a lot of days, down, depressed, etc. So this is the front cover of the book. And as we mentioned, it's a two-part book. So this over here is actually the other part of the book. And so the other side of the book is called Grieve, Grow, and Go. Because, one of the things also that I've learned is that, even though we might feel like this, we can't stay in that space. So Grieve, Grow, and Go is basically a step-by-step guide on how to rebuild your life after loss. Some of the things that I've done, some of the things that I'm learning to do, some of the things that I need to do more of that I don't do enough of, So, both of these sides, I hope will help others, as you guys read my story and just some of the things that I've gone through and grown through. And of course, we're doing this release on a very, very special day. As you guys know, this would have been my daughter's 25th birthday today. And so, just such a big loss, for me, my family, A lot of her friends, and a lot of the people that she's touched, in this world. She was only here for 22 years, but, she inspired me so much, to be, a better person, a kinder person, a more loving person, a more warm person. If you met her, you definitely remember her, and she's somebody that you can't forget. So, on the count of three, I just want us to say happy birthday, KT. Uh, well, not yet, not yet. All right, y'all. One, two, three.
Happy birthday,
And so at the end of this event, we will be doing a balloon release, in honor of her. It's like birthdays and special moments like this. A lot of people think about her, but me and my family, this is a daily thing. And I remember, when my daughter first passed, one of the things that my mom told me is, a lot of times it's not day by day, it's minute by minute. So, but yeah, so back to the book. So I'm going to read you guys. I actually started on this book back in 2019. All right. So 2019, my life looked totally different. I was operating 5 restaurants. I had 1 salon suite at the time. My daughter had just moved back here from attending LSU and completing her first year, going into Georgia State University, had just started working for me at my restaurants. I was a single woman, had not gotten married at the time, hadn't thought about, getting married, wasn't in any type of serious relationship. So my life was totally different when I started writing this book. And I had another ghostwriter I was working with at the time, and I really didn't like how she was telling my story, and so I decided to shelve my book. The only thing that I wrote that I really kept was my dedication in my book. And I actually had the honor of reading this to my daughter before she passed. So that's the first part of my book that I'm going to share. It's the very first thing that you'll see outside of the disclaimer is the dedication. And so it says, people have always said that my life was a movie and should be illustrated as such. I have been too busy opening businesses to make a movie, but I did make time to tell it in written format. I believe that when you die, you will quickly go through your life's moments before you take your last breath. I guess I get to do that before I do so. The things I've been through have been tragic, sad, brutal, spiteful, and eventually wonderful, and have led me to the inspiration and success story that I am today. I would not be here if it weren't for the trials and tribulations that I went through in my childhood and adult life. Sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes you just know what you know. And I always knew I would be successful. I just didn't know how. My book is dedicated to my daughter, Katia Renee Dillard. She just doesn't know how. That single decision I made that resulted in me getting pregnant with her has changed my life in so many wonderful ways. I never planned on having any children, but God saw differently. And because she has been such a great kid, I want more. Katera, thank you for saving my life and being patient with me as I learned how to become a mother. I love you in life and thereafter. February 3rd, 2021. All right, so the book is a really quick read, but I'm going to read a few pages for you guys. Didn't want to pick anything that would be sad or anything like that. So this is an excerpt that I selected. So the chapter is, it has to do with me moving to Atlanta. So it says, Atlanta is home. 15 years later, Atlanta isn't just where I live, it's home. I've spent more time here than anywhere else, and in that time, I've built a life I'm proud of. This city has seen me at my highest and at my lowest. It's where I truly became the person I was meant to be. The journey wasn't easy, and there were moments I questioned whether I made the right choice. But looking back now, I realize Atlanta was always part of the bigger plan. It was a trajectory moment in my life that had I not moved to Atlanta, I don't think I would have ever been able to walk into my purpose and accumulate the success I have today. Atlanta gave me opportunities I would have never had in Nashville. The energy here is different. It pushes you to hustle harder, think bigger, and refuse to settle for mediocrity. The culture of Black excellence and entrepreneurship is woven into the fabric of this city, and being surrounded by that kind of drive and ambition forced me to level up. I had no choice but to grow, adapt, and build something real. But Atlanta didn't just hand me success. This city challenged me, tested me, and ultimately made me stronger. It knocked me down, stripped me of comfort, and demanded that I prove I had what it took to survive and thrive. I had to reinvent myself over and over again, learning from every setback and using each lesson as fuel to keep going. There were times I felt alone, times when the weight of responsibility threatened to break me, but every time I got back up. It's in Atlanta that I found my purpose. I discovered my passion for entrepreneurship, for creating opportunities, and for helping others do the same. This city gave me the platform to turn my ideas into reality, to transform my struggles into stepping stones, and to carve out a path that was entirely my own. It's also where I found my voice, not just as a business person, but as a leader, a mentor, and someone who could inspire others to chase their dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. Success didn't come overnight, and it didn't come without sacrifice, but the struggles I faced here shaped me in ways I never expected. The early days of hustling, the financial setbacks, the moments of doubt, all of it was a part of the process. And now when I look around at what I built, at the life I've created, I know every challenge was worth it. Atlanta isn't just a city to me. It's the place where I became who I am. It's also where S.N.O.O.P was born. It's where I learned resilience, independence, and the true meaning of perseverance. It's where I fought to create the life I always knew I was capable of having. Looking back, I didn't plan to be here. I thought my future was somewhere else. Maybe Miami, maybe back in Detroit, but sometimes life puts you exactly where you need to be, even if you don't see it at the time. For me, that place was Atlanta, and I wouldn't have it any other way. People are always asking me how I met 2 Chainz, how Escobar Restaurant and Tapas came to be, and how the whole deal happened. Truth is, it wasn't something I mapped out step by step. It was a mix of hustle, timing, and life-throwing curveballs that somehow ended up in my favor. At the time, remember, I was already running another business of mine for 2.5 years that I founded called the Hookah Hideaway. And business was super solid. I put in 3 years of grinding, learning, and figuring out how to run a successful lounge. By the time I hit 1.5 years, I saved up a good amount of money, tightened up my game plan, and was ready to expand. My next move, Peter Street. If you know Atlanta, Peter Street right here. If you know Atlanta, you know that it was the prime real estate for nightlife. I wanted in bad. So I started scouting spots, putting in applications, and making sure my name was out there. I had my eyes on a couple of locations, and everything seemed to be falling into place. Then I decided to hit pause for a minute. I had been grinding nonstop, and I figured I deserved a little break. So I booked a trip to Jamaica to unwind, get my mind right, soak up some sun, and come back feeling refreshed and ready to make my next big move. But life had other plans. While I was out there minding my business and enjoying my vacation, I got a call that changed everything. One of the locations I had applied for, one that I really wanted, went to somebody else just like that. I was sick. Here I was thinking I had time that I could move at my own pace, but the game don't wait for nobody. I felt like I had fumbled my opportunity. I remember sitting on that beach, looking out at the water, trying to figure out my next move. I could have given up, settled for something else, but that's not how I'm built. I was going to come back to Atlanta with a new level of determination. If Peter Street was the goal, then I was going to find another way in. No distractions, no breaks, just straight hustle. Then one day I got a call from my lawyer. He had caught wind of another spot opening up and thought it might be a good fit for me. I wasn't about to let another opportunity pass me by, so I moved fast. That's when the 2 Chainz connection happened. What started as a setback ended up being the setup for Escobar. Looking back, missing out on the first location was the best thing that could have happened to me, because what God has for you, no man can take away. And that's how it all began. But before I talk about the play-by-play, I got to tell you how the first call that I did, where I learned about this opportunity to partner with 2 Chainz, was me on a payphone in jail. So remember, I was in Jamaica when I got the initial call about the spot. When I landed back in the States, I was going through customs, sliding my passport into the machine like usual, when 2 agents approached me. "Are you Miss Dillard?" I nodded, not thinking much of it. "Come with us." Just like that, my whole world flipped. Next thing I knew, I was in some back room being told I had a warrant for my arrest in Tennessee. Check fraud. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what the hell they were talking about. Then it hit me. Years ago, my newspaper company and that person who had basically stole the business from under me. That whole situation led to 2 bounced checks to a printing company. And now, 5 years later, they decided to put a warrant over it. I was sitting there trying to process how something so old could come back and shake my life up like this. Then they hit me with another blow. I was about to be taken to Clayton County Jail. If you know Atlanta, you already know Clayton County Jail ain't the place you want to end up. That's a whole different beast. I tried to stay calm, thinking, all right, this is some bullshit. I'll be out in a day or two. But when you don't have a bond, things move differently. Days turned into weeks. I was stuck in a system that didn't care about my side of the story, didn't care that there was a misunderstanding, didn't care that I had a business to run. I was just another name on the list. At first, I was mad as hell. Why was I even there? Why hadn't anyone told me about this case before it got to this point? But then I had to stop and face the reality. I was there and nobody was coming to save me. I was frustrated, embarrassed, and exhausted. Being locked up strips you of your sense of control. You don't know what time it is. You don't know when you're getting out. You don't even know if people on the outside are really fighting for you or just keeping it moving. But let me tell you something about jail. It will humble you real quick. When you're in there, all the titles, all the success, all the outside noise, none of it matters. It's just you, your thoughts, and a whole lot of time. Sitting in that cell, I had a decision to make. I could either sit there pissed off at the world, or I could use that time to think, to really think about my next move. But once I got out, one thing was for sure. I was coming back stronger than ever. One day I was on the phone with my homeboy who had my phone and was handling some of the business while I was locked up. I asked him to check on my Peter Street application just to see if there had been any movement. I wasn't expecting much, but I needed to stay tapped in. He paused for a second and said, "Yo, the landlord actually called and left a voicemail. You want to hear it?" "Yeah, play it." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear as I listened. The landlord's voice came through, sounding real matter of fact. He told me straight up that I probably wasn't going to get the spot I originally applied for because they didn't want another lounge in that space. My heart sank a little, but then he said something that made me perk up. "We really need someone like you on Peter Street." Then he went on. "There's another space available. It needs a lot of work, but it's owned by a famous rapper from Atlanta. He wants to go into business with someone, and he's really interested in the fact that you currently own a party bus company." That caught my attention real quick. I sat up straighter. "Wait, who is it?" There was a pause, like my boy was making sure he heard it right before he repeated it. 2 Chainz. For a moment, everything just stopped. My mind was moving a mile a minute, but I played it cool. "Oh, word," I said, trying not to sound too hyped. "Yeah," my homeboy said. "He wants to partner up with someone who already knows the business, and the landlord thinks you'd be a good fit." I exhaled, trying to process it all. Here I was, locked up, thinking this was the lowest point of my life, feeling like everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. And now, out of nowhere, I had an opportunity that could change my future. But let's be real. I was sitting in a damn jail cell. My reality at that moment didn't match up with the opportunity being presented to me. That's the crazy part about life, though. Sometimes your biggest blessings show up when you least expect them. After I got off the phone, I just sat there staring at the wall, letting it sink in. I knew if I was going to make this happen, I had to get out of there and get my head straight. There wasn't time to sulk or feel sorry for myself. I needed to move with intention. That moment lit a fire in me. I didn't know how long I'd be locked up, but one thing was for sure, I had a new mission. When I got out, I was going to meet with 2 Chainz and make this deal happen. Whatever it took, I was going to turn this setback into the biggest comeback of my life. All right. Yeah, I just felt like it was time, after everything that, I had been through the past 2.5 years, just, being in a dark place, wanting to, release some things that I thought would be helpful and inspiring to others. I felt like the book would be a big part of a legacy, for, my daughter and telling her story and sharing not only, of course, what happened, but what type of person she was, here on Earth and how she impacted my life. So, and then, of course, with meeting her, another reason why I didn't put my book out before is because like I said, I didn't like how it was written. And so, uh, once I met with Taria, it was just like she just was able to really write and tell my story the same way that I would have myself, and definitely, appreciate you for that. I think one thing about me, I'm a person that has, always just kind of spoken on the things that I've been through in life and the things that I've done and the things that I've gone through. But, it is kind of a nervous, feeling, to be able to just, share some of the things like I had shared actually on my Instagram today, a story that I tell in my book just about, my sexuality. And me being suspended from college for a semester. That's something that I've never really spoken on. So yeah, but it is what it is. It's things that I think will help other people. It's my life, and what I've been through. So, and like I said, I think that I've always been kind of like an open book. I would say really like for like the past several years. So maybe that warmed me up to it. That's a really good question. I think there'll be different takeaways, of me at different stages in my life and different things that I've gone through. I think that there'll be something or some part in the book that everybody can take away from. That I think that everybody will find, helpful or inspiring. Because I feel like I've lived like a few different lives in this lifetime already. Of course, it's changed a lot because my daughter was my only child. So, it's just like everything I had was going to be going to her, And so, I don't have any kids right now. And that's actually one thing that I will never forget is reading. It was a comment that somebody had made and seeing my daughter's passing, and they were like, dang, all that hard work Snoop did for nothing. Now her daughter is gone. She ain't got nobody to leave anything to. And, that was like deeply hurtful, but it also was like, it just kind of like really like stung me. But I feel, like I poured more into like mentoring, I poured more, into coaching. But yeah, it's definitely changed a lot, like when people think about generational wealth or, businesses and stuff like that, you think about leaving it to your child. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely deeply changed me. I would say, like before, a lot of people used to call me Big Money Snoop. I don't even like to be called that anymore. I mean, it's not only been humbling, a degree of humility, in there. I think it's definitely made me a more grounded person, probably a more kinder person, more spiritual. It definitely probably has, made me a better person. And I've really just realized that, like, time and people and relationships, is all that we have. I always tell people now, like, I used to really, really grind and work really hard and stuff. And, like when you pass, your tombstone, like my tombstone is not going to say owner of Escobar, it's not going to say owner of Remedy, it's going to say, mother, daughter, sister, maybe wife again. But it just really shows that the only thing that matters is the relationships that you have with people and how you touch people, and how you made people feel. Not what you can buy, not what you look like, not how much money you've made, or even the success that you have. It's like, what are you doing with it to impact others? So this is kind of like something that I talk a lot about in my book, just about, just feeling very dark, really, initially, went to doing different things that would mask, the pain, or the feelings. A lot of it, I kind of posted this on my story today, but, being in nightlife, it's not abnormal to, be out and, taking several shots a night and, drinking and stuff like that. And, I definitely umped that to the umpteenth power, and just, kind of masking, what I was going through. But yes, writing this book was definitely therapeutic. It made me remember some things, that I had been through that, I may have tried to store in the back of my head. It brought some feelings, back to surface. Definitely, had me calling my therapist again. But yes, it was hugely therapeutic, and I think the best part about it was just being able to, leave something that will be an imprint, and an addition to the legacy of my daughter. I think, and this is, I always talk about, just how kind, she is, how big her heart is. But I think one of the things that I miss about her, that I'll share, that I miss about her the most, is just her voice. And I think, we take that for granted, with that it's just something just so simple that we take for granted. And that was one of the things that I spoke on when I spoke at my daughter's funeral, and that I thought about, initially with losing her, is that I would never get the chance to hear her voice again. And her voice was so soft, it was so angelic, she was 22, but, her voice still sounded like she was like 10, and that was actually why I started calling her Plum, because growing up I used to have eat really sweet plums. And, not only was she so sweet as far as her personality, but her voice was so sweet as well. So when she was 8, I started calling her Plum. I think another thing that is funny is, so once she started working for me, because I used to, and I talk about this in the book as well, I used to would not even let her come to my businesses like that. She could only come during the day, maybe have lunch, go home. But once I started letting her work for me and come to the businesses, people would hear me call her Plum. And other people would try to call her Plum. And she would be like, only my mama can call me that. And I think that's one thing that is a big regret for me, is that, I would say I missed out, on a lot of moments, because, I did have her very young, and I was hustling, trying to be successful. And, a lot of times, being a mother did not always come first. Because I'm trying to pay the bills, I'm trying to work hard, I'm trying to grind it out. and something that I talk about in my book as well. So, um, the balance was not always there like we would want it. Um, especially, in, those earlier days. I did learn, later on down the road, but I definitely wish I would have learned sooner, So, for me, it's, some regrets, when it comes to that because, uh, I was very, very headstrong and focused, on, being successful and taking care of her and leaving something to her. And, now she's not here. Uh, I mean, unfortunately, it's probably the night that I described her passing, just because it's somebody that found her, deceased. It's one of the last memories I have of her, and it's also, a physical memory that's like really embedded, in my brain and in my head, that I, visually see, pretty often. But, you know, I mean, that night is just, not something that you expect to go through, and so, that's a night that replays a lot. And even though there are a lot of other great moments, that I do talk about her in the book, that one really, really stands out the most. Advice that I would share with the entrepreneurs in the room is to definitely invest in mentorship. I think a lot of times, we try to do it on our own. And, when you do it on your own and when you try to do something you've never done before, it's going to cost you more money, more time, and you may not get the results that you want to get. So I know, like when I was first, when I was coming up, as an early entrepreneur, there were not a lot of mentorship programs outside of maybe like going to business school or something like that. But that's just by the book stuff. But actually having a mentorship that has done it, that's doing business the right way, that's doing it ethically, that can actually teach you the game step by step, I think is hugely important. And a lot of people, are scared to invest in mentorship, not willing to put up, the first dollar. But, in order to be a business owner or to be an entrepreneur, it's all about investing and taking calculated risks. That's a really good question. And I honestly don't even like speaking on advice with grief because I'm still going through it myself and not doing it right all the time. You know what I'm saying? I do not get it right all the time. I'm learning, each and every day. But with that being said, I would say just like give yourself grace. You know, find people that you can that can relate, that also know grief, because some people, have not, been through it yet, and I do say yet because, the longer we live, we are going to all, have death, at our doorsteps. But I would definitely say just give yourself grace, I've heard this quote so many times, even prior to losing my daughter, and just never really understood it. But, they say everybody grieves differently. And, it's so true, and a lot of times we don't know how we would react or what we would do, if we were in that situation. I had been around people that had lost all kinds of people. I never could relate, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times you say, I'm sorry for your loss and then go on about your business, But yeah, again, give yourself grace, grieve whatever way you need to grieve as healthy as you possibly can, no matter what that looks like for you. All right, so I tell a story about this in my book as to, actually when I had my very first experience. with another woman, and I'm not gonna go into details about that. Um, very juicy and interesting. It's on page 31. But anyways, after that experience, I will say, it was during uh, that suspension of actually Jamaica and I, we went to college together at Vanderbilt. That's how we met. Do you remember me getting suspended? Did you know? Just saying. Yes, but so it was during that experience, that suspension, that I actually had my first experience, and I'll never forget coming back to Vanderbilt. Um, I was so nervous to share with. I was in this group called the Fab Five, and so we were supposed to be like the cutest girls on the campus, popular, etc. And they were just like ultra feminine and all of this. And I remember like feeling like that they were going to judge me, and they did not. But I ended up telling this guy that I actually was dating, and he was so upset. And I did not even know if I was going to be gay. I came back and I pretty much figured that I was bisexual. And I did have experiences with a couple of men, after that. But anyways, he was so upset that he told several people on campus, and all he did was have them girls knocking on my door. Sorry, mama. Man, crazy. Okay, well, so with Detroit, I only spent like the first maybe like 9 years or so in Detroit. And then we moved to Nashville. So Detroit, of course, has a lot of grit, hard knock life, etc. But I didn't really experience that because I was so young. My mom kind of kept us sheltered from that. And then when we moved to Nashville, Nashville is super slow. It's white boy country. Good old boy system. Etc. So when I came to Atlanta, first of all, I realized that Black people can become millionaires. People that look like me, that was the very first thing that I realized, is that like, man, Black people was really doing it here. You know what I'm saying? Like when I first moved here, it was just something for me to go out and have to pay $10 or $20 for valet. When I first moved here, within the first week of living here, my car was repossessed. So it definitely was not the Snoop that you see today. And so, man, people got over on me so much, you know what I'm saying? Like so it taught me, it continued to teach me street smarts. I was already book smart, but it just made me, really a beast by being able to now have both of those sides. All right, so I'm gonna answer it backwards. What I would share with other grieving parents that have lost their child, I ended up, and I actually have not gotten in touch with them again, because sometimes like just sitting around talking about it and all that just makes me even more sad, But one of the things that was, I guess, a bright moment for me after losing my daughter is I did become a part of a group of parents, more so mothers, that had lost their children. And I do think that it's a very unique loss because it's one of those losses that you're just not supposed to experience at all. It really throws you, just totally out of whack. And I do think that it is helpful to have people in your circumference or in your network that can relate. Because I remember like even before my daughter passed, when I would just even hear of somebody losing a child, I would be like, oh God, like I can't even imagine that, you know what I'm saying? And so then to have the experience, but the experience is nothing like anything that you could ever imagine. Like as a parent, you don't even really want your mind to go there. You don't even really even want to think about it at all. But I do think, because a lot of times people don't know what to say, they don't know. I know even like the very first Mother's Day, people were wondering like if they should tell me Happy Mother's Day, And so, but I do think that it helps to be around other individuals that have also experienced that loss and to be able to speak with them. Now, in regards to therapy, like for me, I knew that therapy would be mandatory, and I need to take it even more serious than I have and do it more consistently. But I mean, I just knew I was gonna need some help, So I knew that nobody would really be able to get me through this. And I will say, like even initially. Because people talk about like religion and God and going to church. And initially, I had some moments of being upset with God, because it's like, my daughter did not deserve this, So there were a lot of thoughts that I needed to break down, some that I did not even want to share. And like, again, I knew that therapy, was going to be mandatory for me. I know that the myth is that Black people don't really believe in therapy, but I do think that our generation, as well as some of the generations closer to us, are really starting to realize, like, a lot of people are actually in therapy. Like, raise your hand if you've had a therapist. See, you know what I'm saying? So, I think we're starting to get it, and realize, but it's a personal decision. It's a decision that you have to make, when you know that, you're struggling with something, and you know that you need that help and that outlet. All right, y'all ready?
Yes, we love you, baby.
All right, so on 3, y'all, we're going to say, we miss you, KT, as loud as we can, and let these balloons go. Mama, you got something you want to say? You got something
Happy birthday, Katira.
Yeah.
I love you. I miss you every day.
We love you, Mama.
We love you, Mama. We love you.
All right, y'all. 1, 2, 3. We miss you, KT!
We love you, girl.
Miss you, baby.
Heavenly Miss.